Hey everybody, Nicole Sauce here from Living Free in Tennessee, telling you happy Black Friday. That's right. I used to take this day off from shows and I figured I'm roasting coffee anyway today. I might as well just make it a work day. So thought it'd be fun to have a live stream today, the day after Stuff Yourself Day. How's everybody feeling this morning? A little indigestion? No indigestion? It's funny because yesterday it's like the Thanksgiving holiday, you do all the cooking, there's people around, and then you eat and you're like one plate of food, totally full. I remember years when I would go back for like seconds and thirds and whatever. Not this year, nope. Totally stuffed. Totally stuffed. And usually that means I'll wake up the next day and not be hungry till noon. I've had this weird, like, I'm hungry this morning. I didn't eat though, but I'm having my coffee. So we're having a coffee chat this morning. So here's what's going to happen. For those of you who are new to this live stream, do me a favor, like and hit the bell button, follow all those things. And if you're not new to the live stream, consider sharing this with somebody you think might be interested in the topics we talk about at livingfreeintennessee.com. Hi, Tori. Yes, you made it. Proud of you to this week, Tori. You're kicking butt and taking names. And anyway, so do that and we can grow the reach of our community. It's really great to see. We've seen a lot of impacts from this community and the Self-Reliance Festival community in the last couple of months, just positive impacts on people's lives. I want to keep that momentum going, but it takes y'all because y'all are the community, not me. Okay. So there will be a pause. I'm going to do a 5-second countdown with my fingers, and then we're going to start recording the podcast. This is our Friday show, which is a Homestead Happening show. If you have questions or comments that you want to say, just put them in all caps. I will highlight some if I see ones that are interesting in the video so people who watch the live stream later can see it. If anybody contacts you who uses my logo, uses my visual assets and says, hey, let's go into a private chat room and we're going to talk about whatever, that's not me. I will not do that to you. So I don't have a private chat room and I'm not going to pull you off on the side and offer and beg for Bitcoin. So if that happens, it's not me. It's a scam. I don't have a good way to know what's happening, but I don't want anybody to be swindled out of their money because that would suck. Okay, let's do this. We're going to do the Homestead Happenings. If you have questions, guys, all caps, I'll star them and we'll handle those in the Q&A show that's right afterwards. I'll be inviting Holler Neighbors on. I see Steve's already on. Steve, I guess I'll email that to you because you're still not in the Telegram group. I'd like to get you in the Telegram group, though, because then I can just send out one Telegram link next time. And it'd be like super, super efficient. Super efficient. Okay, let's do this. We're going to do the podcast, guys. You ready? Are you ready for the podcast? Anything you want to hear about today that I need to know about? Okay. Well, I guess you can tell me in the chat if there is. Ready? Let's do it. Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, November 25th, 2022, and this is episode 659 of Living Free in Tennessee. We're going to get to 660 tomorrow with the Q&A show, and we are recording this live. Of course, it's a Homestead Happenings Day. So we're going to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving, because a lot of us did Thanksgiving if you're in the U.S. yesterday, and those who weren't in the U.S., we ridiculed you from afar. I know you already did your Thanksgiving before we did ours. We're kind of late to the party on this one. It is what it is. We'll talk about livestock, fermenting garlic, and a lot more. In fact, I realized I didn't put fermenting garlic in my show notes. Fermenting garlic. Now we'll really talk about fermenting garlic. And we'll talk about what's coming off the land, how things are this winter, that sort of thing. That's all in today's show. We're going to follow the show with a Q&A session, which will be in the live stream. If you are listening to the audio and wonder, how do I get a question in? That's simple. Just send an email to Nicole, Nicole, at livingfreeintennessee.com. Or go to livingfreeintennessee.com and click on contact. And those emails come to me and throw your question in there. I mark them and then work them into the Q&A show. With that, I want to thank today's sponsor, and that is freestudying.com. Freestudying.com is a new community based in the freedom of speech. So you get to say what you want unless you're attacking somebody, basically. I don't know. I haven't seen them censor anybody, but I haven't seen anybody attack anybody either. So is what it is. But they are a great new way to interact with fellow homesteaders and preppers if you're interested in homesteaders, preppers, and entrepreneurs. And it's all over freesteading.com. If you go over there, search for Living Free in Tennessee and join our community. And there's a whole bunch of people talking back and forth. It's growing every day. I actually took a break from freesteading for 2 weeks for 2 reasons. One, I was on the road and I just wasn't on social media at all. Then I came back and I had the vid, man. So it wasn't really a break from freesteading. It was just a break from everything. Hopped back over there today. There are all sorts of cool messages and things to talk about. That's at freesteading.com. And I want to thank them for sponsoring today's show. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Christmas is coming. Christmas is coming. The goose is getting fat. Please put a penny in the old man's hat. Yeah, my voice isn't back yet because I had that cold thing. Anyway, if you're looking for like an unusual or difficult to buy for person and they like coffee, we have a special going on this week at hollerroast.com where if you order gift coffee to send to somebody, you can choose a free gift wrapping upgrade. We won't ship those until after December 1st. And we gift wrap them for free and write a card and put a card with it. So if you're looking for a way to solve the problem, Holler Roast has your back. If you have a bunch of people you want to mail to, especially if you already have their names and addresses in a spreadsheet, email me and I will hook that up. I have a number of people who outsource their entire gift packaging situation to friends and family. Once a year, they just send me a spreadsheet. They have notes written in there, what they want written to each person, and we send those out from here. Makes their holidays really easy, right? Anyway, that's all over at hollerroast.com. And yes, I'm drinking coffee as we go because we're trying to shake off the tired of cooking Thanksgiving dinner yesterday. Okay, first segment is forage. This is where we talk about what we're getting off the land at the Holler Homestead. And I kind of combine gardening with foraging in this section for the winter because there's not a lot coming off the garden. And there's not a lot coming off the land, so it kind of made sense to put it all together. So root vegetables like Jerusalem artichoke are primo right now. Persimmons are still coming off the trees. We're about to be past persimmon season, and then that's it. Wintergreen will be the only thing I'm finding at that point. Winter herbals like mullein, you'll have all winter long. And the watercress patch just got nailed by the frost that we had a couple weeks ago. It got cold here. It stayed cold and pretty much until Thanksgiving. And then we had this beautiful, almost 70-degree day yesterday. So the watercress, as a result, just got burned. But it's already coming back, and it looks like we'll have another round of watercress salads that we can do. And that's awesome. The lettuce looks great in the aquaponics system. We need to harvest another round of it. And I'll talk a little bit more about the aquaponics system under infrastructure. And then we also have duckweed in the pond. Now that's not for me, but that feeds the ducks. So I'm actually surprised to see it blooming as well as it is. I think it's because the pond is spring fed, 55-degree water comes in there. So even when it's cold outside, that water's warm. In fact, on really cold days, the ducks, you'll see them floating in the pond in front of where the spring feeds the pond because that's warmer than it is outside. So that's what's coming off the land. Next segment is livestock. This is where we talk about all the critters on the homestead. I love the critters on the homestead. Okay, first and foremost, we have it's raining deer. Hallelujah, it's raining deer. I don't know if we got another deer today, another venison, but last week we got 2. I basically aged them for 7 days. Today we'll be cutting those up and sausaging and staking and roasting and all the things we do with deer. And it's a lot of meat. So I'm handing some out to community members just because it's nice to share the bounty. And Tactical mentioned that he heard some gunfire this morning. So I don't know if that means somebody got something, but they sure tried. And guys, the way we get deer is that I have neighbors who like to hunt and they don't eat a lot of venison. And so they give us the carcass basically when they hunt. They take the antlers and we process the meat. I also have friends in the area who don't like to process, but who do like to hunt, who will come with a deer. And for a portion of the deer, I process it for them. It's been going on like this for years. I have an outdoor refrigerator. They can just put the deer halves in there or deer quarters in there. Usually it's quartered. And from there, I know what to do. They get their packages a week or so later, and we go on with life. And for me, because I'm not really excited to hunt, I'm willing to try hunting if it feels like I want to. I don't really even want to. I think this is where you just admit what you're best at sometimes. And what I'm best at is cutting them up, sausaging them, all of the things that we do. And I've developed a community around me that has other things they love. We complement each other, and we all put in on the same sort of project. And I think that's a really good way to organize things, especially on a homestead, is to have a homestead community around you. And then you don't have to feel like you need to do everything. Because there's kind of two conflicts going on here, right? Where one side, we're like fiercely independent and I want to do everything from scratch and blah, 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 right? Well, sometimes it's like, I want to know that I can. Like, I remember the first time I processed a bird, I was handed a dead chicken. And I had read up on how to scald them and pluck them and all that, and did that. And then I cooked these roosters who were like 3 or 4 years old. So you know what we did, right? Low and slow for a long, long time. And because of that, I ended up knowing that tough birds can be cooked and it can be delicious, because these birds tasted the best they could. But what I didn't know is, am I capable of killing and processing a bird? So I had meat birds. That was my first year of meat birds. And a neighbor had just wanted to get rid of some roosters, so we cooked them. And I was like, I want chicken for dinner, and the meat birds are about ready to go. And we're not scheduled till this weekend to do like the group process of all the birds, but I made a decision, and it was a mindset thing. I'm going to go out. I'm going to get that bird. I'm going to kill the bird efficiently. I'm going to process the bird. I'm going to cook the bird. And I did that. I went out there, grabbed a bird, wrung its neck. Wringing its neck is actually a pretty fast way to dispatch a bird, even though it's not like the slit bleed that everybody likes to do. It works well. And for me, the most important part about dispatching a bird is knowing I have dispatched the bird all the way. Wringing the neck, you know they're dead. It's fast. I actually basically ripped the heads off at that point. And I scalded the bird. I plucked the bird. I eviscerated the bird. I cooked the bird. It was delicious. So that was something where I needed to know I could do it. And now when we do classes here, what we do, I show people how to do the whole process. And then it turns out that there are stations. There are people who are just sitting there processing the birds, especially, well, like usually we don't make people in the class do that. Like, we have them do their bird. I guess I could ask them to do a second bird and then we'd all be done with it. It just depends on how far they're going to go. But we end up as Holler Neighbors, like Tactical and Nighthawk are dispatching them. I'm scalding them and plucking them. And then we get to the evisceration and processing, you know, then we ice them, right? And then it's evisceration and processing. And it's sort of like we end up at stations. Now, we all are cross-trained, right? We can all do the different things, but we have a rhythm where we specialize, and it works really well. So I think that, sure, it's great to know you can do something from beginning to end. I actually have no desire to test myself on, can I shoot a deer? As I said, if I was starving and I needed to try, I would probably miss a lot because I haven't done that, because I haven't built that skill. But with the way things are right now, there are enough people around me who love the part where you get up really early and you sit in a deer stand, or you look for signs of deer and set and walk around and hike until you find one and shoot one. That's magic, right? That I don't do it. I do the processing part. So it's raining deer. I love this time of year. We're also getting a cow next week. So freezer audit is in order. That's right. My freezers are fairly well organized, but they did get a little stirred up at the Food Forest workshop, and I need to go through them. We have beef left from last year from the other person who shares the cow with me, and we're gonna feed that into Holler Neighbors who want some more beef stored in their own houses, and then go from there. So is what it is. The Muscovies have grown their wing feathers back. I had never clipped a bird's wing until this year when we got the Muscovies, and I know that they can fly. And I heard a message this morning. We need to bump up clipping the Muscovy wings on the priority list. So apparently they flew from the coop to the pond this morning, which is natural for them. However, what we don't want is Muscovies flying all over, eventually maybe getting killed by other things because they venture too far off the land. So the thing about Muscovies is they have these really sharp talons. And so I got to get my long sleeves on, and we'll have to close them in the coop, catch them one at a time, which ought to yield some pretty fun video if we do video. And then what we've learned, because Muscovies are some pretty badass birds, ducks. They are strong, and I can calm them down by just holding them under their, like right under their chin, and keeping, if you don't have their feet flapping in the air, they're more comfortable. They're less likely to struggle. But these guys are not like super friendly, handleable Muscovies. If they have babies, I'm going to try to get those to be more comfortable with being handled by us. But once they're calm, I can spread out the wings and clip them. If you're like sitting here listening to this going, I don't know if I want to clip a bird's wings, it might hurt them. It doesn't if you do it right. And there are some really good videos on YouTube about that, where the person shows you, like, if the feathers have blood in them, you don't clip those ones, because if you do, they'll bleed to death if you bleed them out. Okay, now you've heard that, and you're like terrified of clipping your bird's wings, right? Well, if you accidentally hit one of those feathers that has blood in the tube of the feather, if you rip the feather out, they won't bleed to death. So if you make a mistake, you can still see the bird. It just hurts them because you have to rip the feathers out. The easiest way to not do that is don't clip their wings too low, but also we'll spread the wings out, and I'll look and I'll see, okay, that one's still growing, and so it still has blood in it, and I'll be sure not to clip that one, and I'll see where the top of it is, and I just clip above the top of that feather. It works great. It's just about going a little bit more slowly, I think. If you're in a rush, it's not a good idea. So things like trimming hooves of sheep and clipping wings of poultry, I just feel like being in a rush is a bad idea. And that's often the case. It's better just to make time. In fact, I need to trim hooves this week and next week. I was supposed to do it last week, but nothing was happening last week while I was sick. So, I mean, some things happened, right? But not a lot of activity on the home. Things that could be put off were put off. So now that's all going to bite me in the next 2 weeks as I catch up on all that stuff. Brownie has been segregated from the other boy sheep and put in a pasture that he can't get out of. He is a little irritated about this because he can see the ladies, because he's at my place right now, and he's interested in hanging out with them. And at the same time, one of them appears not to be pregnant. So I think we're going to bring her over for a visit, and they're going to hang out together for a month, and we'll see how that goes. The Holler Homestead sheep are also on hay and not pasture at this point. They're going through about a bale a week. We went into the winter with 40 bales. So that means at this rate, we have 40 weeks. But when the other sheep, the ones over at the other property need to have their transition from pasture to hay, we're going to start going through probably 2 bales a week. So that's important for us to know, because it's sort of our first year knowing what the eating requirement will be of the sheep. We've had unusually early cold this year, so the grass is not growing as well. That said, the other pasture, which is about 16 acres. So I have 3.2 here, and I have 3 girls and 1 boy here at this time. We don't have enough grass for them to eat for 2 reasons. 1, it was really dry this year, and it's just not the best year for it. 2, with the installation of the food forest, there was earthworks and ditches dug, and some of what would have been growing the pasture into pasture was disturbed. And then we've just got little baby grass coming up, little baby, grass and fescue and whatnot coming up. So that's not ready for sheep. And it will be by next spring, but that means we just have less pasture here to begin with. The 16-acre property, on the other hand, although it has been dry and it's growing really slowly, there's still some there. And we're having a nice warm spell right now. It'd be really cool if we had a wet warm spell. We have not. We were supposed to get rain this week, and then it evaporated into not rain. So a good rain would be really nice. And I think it looks like, knock on wood, we're going to get some rain going into this weekend, which will really help us with, because we can still grow grass in Tennessee right now. And then the longer we can keep the sheep over at the 16-acre property off of hay, the longer our Timothy grass hay lasts into the spring. And then in the spring, the grass starts growing again and they're on forage again. I am really glad that as we went into the summer, I could tell it was really dry, and we pre-purchased a bunch of Timothy hay for the sheep and stored it in the hayloft so that we wouldn't be trying to sort right now when it's more expensive and more scarce. What happens from here is by about February, restocking hay of any kind becomes impossible. So actually, Tactical and I should probably sit down and make sure we count the bales and we look at the weeks and how long it's going to be till we think the pasture's ready again, and make sure, because even now I can still source it, but in a couple of months, it's just gone. And then at that point, the only option I have is I have a friend who makes big rolls of hay, and we can go get one of those. It's not necessarily the best nutritional makeup for the sheep, and it is kind of a big effort to drive all the way across the state for it. But on the other hand, he probably has 20 of them available and will sell them to me. So it's a good backup plan to have, but we're not exactly set up to move rounds of hay around, right? So I guess we do have one other person in the area with hay, but it's not Timothy. And the sheep really like the Timothy, although they'll eat what they eat. I'm sure they will eat what they eat. Rabbits are bred, and we don't know if it took, but we're a couple weeks in on rabbit reproduction, which means in a couple weeks we'll know if we have baby rabbits or not. These rabbits are new. So we switched out our rabbits because we haven't been having good success with the breeding program on the rabbits. We've had great success with the pooping program, but not the breeding program. And so we got a fresh stock in, and we'll see how they do. And usually the first round of rabbits that are born, the moms don't really take care of them very well and they die. So that's also something that if it happens, we're expecting it. If it happens the second batch, then you know that you have bad mothers, and that's not something you want to breed into your genetics as you do that. So that's the update for the livestock. Next segment is harvest meals. It's where we talk about what we're cooking based on what we've put up at the Holler Homestead. And there has been a lot of rolling pottage. What's pottage, you ask? Well, pottage is when you have a pot of something cooking and you serve it and you don't eat all of it. And then for the next day, you like fold in more things. You make a bigger pot of whatever. And you end up with this rolling stew that never ends. And I know it sounds gross, but it's not. It's delicious because pretty much everything that comes off the homestead, you can put into a pot with the right spices and you end up with delicious stew. And when it's cold outside, stew is delicious. So Mama Sauce made minestrone with some legumes that I can usually handle as part of my webinar that I did, the workshop I did on pantry management. And speaking of which, if you didn't get that and want to get it, livingfreeintennessee.com/pantry. The recordings are all up and it's ready for download. It takes a little bit of processing after all the recording for it to happen. But John let me know, I think yesterday, that it's ready to go. So if you want to get your hands on a copy of that, livingfreeintennessee.com/pantry. You can grab it. It's about 4.5 hours of content on how to apply permaculture principles to developing and maintaining your pantry. Anyway, at the beginning of that, I was like, here's something. I asked her to make the soup because a lot of people do long-term storage with rice and beans, and I'm allergic to beans. And so I don't. And we put out a recipe book using, different sort of dry legumes. And Mama Sauce wrote that. The reason Mama Sauce wrote that is I can make up recipes all day long. And if I do that, I am lying to you because I can't actually eat it or taste it. David Siegler wants to say, it says, can Mama Sauce adopt me? Yes, she can. I'm sure she'd be happy to adopt you. So I asked her to do the recipes from real recipes she makes rather than me making up random things, because that would be disingenuous. So I put one of my recipes in there. There's an argument she and I have had for years about how to properly cook rice. So we have both methods in there. But other than that, it's all Mama Sauce. And she made a minestrone recipe. And the reason I asked her to do this is there's the recipe. And there are the ingredients listed on the recipe. And then there's the pantry. And there are the things that are in the pantry. And those two things don't always match. So she did the soup based on what was in my pantry. And it was delicious. I got to taste it with substitution. She talks about some of the substitutions she did because, if not this, then that. That's the way it works. If you can learn to substitute for recipes rather than sticking strongly to the recipe, you're in a much better place, a much freer place on how you can tap into the wealth of food that you store. And it's a good skill to have. And it's really about learning what the important part of the recipe is and what's sort of like this adds subtle flavor boosts. And if I don't have that one, like celery, it's okay. Life goes on. So she did that. And we took that stew, and that was dinner that night because it was a long day doing the workshop. The workshop was 4.5 hours long, but for that, we spent about 8.5 hours doing it. It ended up taking both my time and Mama Sauce's time. And that meant there wasn't a lot of cooking happening for dinner, but there was cooking happening during the workshop. So we used that for dinner. And the next day I was like, well, I have this chicken stew from when I was sick, and I have this minestrone stew, put them together and made Holler stew. And it was delicious. And we ate that for another day. And now the other half of that is going to be freeze dried and packaged for future hiking or road trips that I take. And right now I have a half freeze dryer full of that ready to go. And I want to do the whole freeze dryer. So I'm waiting for the turkey soup that I'm making today. So we're making turkey stew as one of our leftover meals. I'm going to fill the other half of the freeze dryer with that and just do one old big stew thing. And, that's another harvest meal, right? So we've cooked the turkey, and we had 11 people over for Thanksgiving. And they ate turkey, and there's still turkey left, and there was a carcass. So last night I just made the bone broth out of the turkey and a couple of onions and some celery. That's cooling now. And then I'll put it in the freezer, pull the fat off the top. And I use that for sautés and frying eggs and that sort of thing. And then I'll add all sorts of ingredients that I have on hand. We'll have delicious turkey soup for dinner tonight, along with some sides, probably leftover sides from Thanksgiving dinner. That's what I'm thinking. And then from there, we'll portion off part of it for the freeze dryer and have the rest of it for the rest of the day. And there's usually, at this time of year, and I'll talk about this later, actually, probably. Let me look. Is it later or is it now? Yeah, we'll talk about that later. So I'll go into more about what we're doing with the turkey later in the show. I am fermenting garlic. Somebody heard me talk about black garlic, and I've never made it before. And I spread misinformation because I said it takes 30 to 50 hours to do it. It's actually 30 to 50 days, which I corrected on a subsequent podcast. And that was just because I was going from memory and I was kind of doing a quick look online and I misread something. So black garlic is garlic that's been kept at a temperature high enough for it to ferment, and it turns black over time. It ferments for a long time. And that brings out through the Maillard reaction, which is the same thing I'm doing when I roast coffee, guys. It brings out the sugar flavors, and so it's a nice flavor. If you go too long, it gets charred. Not good. But if you do it right, you're good to go. A lot of people make it by putting dry garlic in a crock pot on low and running it for 30 to 50 days. Turns out they make a special made appliance for fermenting garlic. And somebody who listens to the podcast heard that, and he sent me a garlic fermenter because he's like, it's so delicious. You need to do that, right? So it arrived right before I went to Jack Spirko's. I was like, I'm like, whoop, very busy, very focused on my next thing. And I ended up saying, okay, well, we'll fill this up, right? Well, I didn't really start it till Thanksgiving, night before Thanksgiving. And in the manual, which is translated from another language rather poorly, it said, I can't even remember how it said it, but it said, if you don't like the smell of garlic, you might not want to put it in your house. It didn't say it that way, but in essence, it said that. Smells strongly. So I thought, well, I'll put it in my mudroom and it'll be cool. So my mudroom now is like eye-wateringly garlicky smelling, by the way. And I put the garlic in there, started it, and the cool thing is it's kind of a little bit of garlic smell in my house, but not bad. And I can actually move it outside if I want to. But the cool thing about the garlic fermenter is you have black garlic in 7 to 9 days. So we'll be tasting black garlic while Mama Sauce is still in town, because she's in town helping me with the coffee roasting and shipping rush. This time of year, a lot of people order Holler Roast as gifts. And Mama Sauce comes out and helps me in 2 ways. She helps keep me sane and remember to cook dinner. And the other thing is she helps me with the production, the high production that's coming out of Holler Roast, because we have about 4 weeks of a lot of orders, and then it drops down to almost nothing for a few weeks. And that's where we're at right now, is a lot of orders are coming in, especially with the Black Friday special, the free gift wrapping upgrade. There's a lot going on. We're not actually roasting those orders yet. We're roasting other orders, but we're getting prepped for that as we see what the volume is going to be next week when we start shipping all of the Christmas and Hanukkah orders that have come in. Anyway, so that's going to happen, and we'll get to taste the black garlic. I'll probably make a video about it. Something I did this week before Thanksgiving, you don't want to go into Thanksgiving with a fridge full of leftovers, right? Right? Yeah, no, you don't, because you're going to end up with a fridge full of leftovers. And so we still needed to eat. This is when I will do the brisket. Not every time, but it's often right before a busy time I'll do the brisket, because if I cook a brisket, it's usually enough to feed 4 of us for one night. No leftovers, because once we get into the brisket, it's delicious, and some of the people here eat a lot of it. And so I don't usually have a lot of leftovers. I do have a couple leftover brisket pieces, but that is something the day before Thanksgiving. I have an electric smoker. I had the brisket defrosted. I did a nice dry rub on it, smoked the brisket. I actually smoked it with hardwoods I found in my yard instead of specific kinds of hardwoods. And it was, I guess you call that yard brisket, right? So that was delicious, and it was perfect right before Thanksgiving because we're going to have turkey the next day. So it's a different contrast, and it's very easy. It's like one of those meals that people over dramatize how hard it is to cook a brisket. It's pretty easy if you have a smoker that can keep a steady low temperature. And a wood-fired smoker, that's harder to do. It takes more attention, right? An electric or propane one, you have a thermostat just keeping it going for you. It's like having a giant smoking crock pot, right? It's super easy. So you prep the brisket, you put it in, set everything up, make sure that there hasn't been a power outage or something, and you're done. It takes like 5 minutes of time to do that on one end and 3 minutes on the other, and you got a delicious dinner. So that was a really good harvest meal that we did. If you are not on the Living Free in Tennessee email list, go to livingfreeintennessee.com and consider signing up, because we're doing a monthly network newsletter, and I write what's going on here, and I feature just events you might be interested in going to anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, really, if you have one. And I put those into the newsletter once a month. Plus, I have decided what we're doing, because I had an email going out every time a podcast released. And it's like, hey, a podcast came out. Here's a podcast. That's pretty much all it says. Or, hey, a podcast came out. By the way, we're doing a member webinar in 2 weeks. That's been the point of that, and I didn't think that email was bringing enough value. So I decided to stop sending those, only send the network news for a month while we retooled the purpose of that email. Well, we have retooled it. Right now, I'm sending it once a week, and it highlights what the live stream schedule is in front of us, the week in front of us. So it goes out Mondays. And it also says these are the episodes that happened last week. So you can see the episodes. And then we thank our sponsors, and we have some other things we highlight in there. It's a short email. If you're not on that email, consider getting on it, because one of the things that happens is if there's a recipe I think is particularly interesting, I will put it in that email. And a recipe we shared going into Thanksgiving was my chestnut dressing recipe, which is delicious. And also, I think I made up a recipe this Thanksgiving, blueberry cranberry sauce. Usually I do cranberry with orange, some bourbon, some spices, and that's the cranberry sauce. Well, this year I decided, well, I've got all these blueberries that I harvest. A friend of mine let me come to her blueberry farm and harvest. And they're naturally sweet, which means I'm not going to have to add as much sugar, right? So I added those in, made this recipe, tasted it, and it was not sweet, but it was not tart, because we balanced that out. So it wasn't like your typical glop from a can cranberry sauce. It was a homemade cranberry sauce that's not as sweet as the canned stuff. And it's really a good compliment to turkey, by the way. Definitely recommend. So that recipe is going to come out next Monday when I send it out. And that might be a good Christmas thing, right? It goes well with meat. And right now you can buy cranberries cheap, because everybody who didn't buy them, they're now for sale. It's like the trick. Usually turkeys today are cheap. Well, cheaper than they were 2 days ago. It just depends on your store, but you can find good deals on hams and turkeys usually this time of year. Next segment is Winter on the Homestead, and this is where we talk about winter on the homestead. Whoa! Crazy talk. I have turned my aquaponics system back on. We had about 2 weeks of yuck, and it was cold. And what I don't want to have happen is water freezes in the aquaponics system, expands out, breaks pipes, and then I got to redo the whole system. So I disconnected my wicking beds, but I left the water running because it wasn't going to be cold enough that I felt like I needed to turn the water off and drain the pipes. And we made it through. And some things, like some of the lettuce looks a little sad. I had plastic covering it, like hoop. I have hoops over it, and I had plastic covering it. Plus it's under Taj Mahal, which helps with frost. And some of the lettuce looks a little peaked. And some of the celery looks a little peaked, but they're doing okay. And we ended up getting through that season. I was taking in all my non-frost resistant plants, like the water hyacinth, and I have a eucalyptus tree in a little pot. Those have been out all summer. I brought them into my mudroom, which is cooler than the rest of my house, because I was afraid I'd shock them going from like, we're used to 40-degree weather, and now it's 70 degrees in Nicole Sauce's house. I should have brought them in sooner and just acclimated them to my house. I have a long tradition of killing every winter the water hyacinth. So brought them in, and if it was above freezing, put them back out. So far, the water hyacinth looks a little sad, but it's not dead. So hopefully this new approach will do well. Well, now we're not going down below freezing for at least the next 2 weeks unless something crazy happens. So I put the wicking beds back together, added water to the aquaponics system, threw the water hyacinth back out there. It can just live with the fish. The fish are more awake because it's warmer. They're eating more. They're pooping. That gives nutrients to the water hyacinth. And it waters my lettuce beds. So I think we'll have another good round of lettuce. The one thing that isn't growing as fast as I was hoping it would is the cauliflower. So I don't have cauliflower yet, and it's actually kind of late in the fall season to not have cauliflower. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know why. It's something I did. So it may just be that I didn't have enough nutrient in there. So I probably should get some rabbit poop up on that bed, or it might have just been too cold too early. Not sure, but they're not dead. So Maybe they'll like overwinter and I'll get the early spring cauliflower. That's been known to happen to me. Also happens with carrots. So that's what's up with the aquaponics system. So winter on the homestead we've been de-winterizing for a couple weeks. We are using up the less high quality firewood. So I have Osage orange, which is really great on a cold night. In fact, I accidentally put one on last night. It was 76 degrees in my house when I got up this morning. But we're using the not so great firewood now because as winter gets colder, the well-seasoned best firewood is what you want at that time of year. So that's happening. And then the log splitter popped a weld last year, still hasn't been repaired. And we are going to get that to my welder friend. I don't know what his schedule is. I don't actually need the log splitter at this hot minute, but I figured it's time to get that repaired so that I can use it when I need it. And we broke it processing, I don't know, cord and a half of wood over at base camp at a GSD weekend. It just popped the weld between the post and the base. And it's something that can be repaired. He has the skill to do it. So we're going to get that done. I don't have to buy a new log splitter. Next segment is Holler Neighbors and Community. This is where we talk about the LFTN community and the Holler Neighbors. Pretty much, first and foremost, what the Holler Neighbors have been up to is Holler Thanksgiving. So yesterday there were 11 of us and we came together, had Thanksgiving dinner. It was delicious. Everybody brought something. We had people from the LFTN community at large, as well as Holler Neighbors. And then kind of going into yesterday, I'm like, well, what can we do? Because I can play music and we can sit around the campfire and that's always fun. But I thought, why not do game night? So we had a pretty competitive game of Uno and played some other games. And it was just a fun time. It was really good. Next segment is infrastructure. This is where we talk about what we are building / deploying on the homestead. And the first thing is, I have a question for you all. If we do a fencing workshop, do you want to come? What do I mean by that? Well, we've learned a lot about fencing in the last couple years. And so we can show you how to stretch a fence. We can go over how to use an electric fence, which I remember the first time I did mine, that was a huge pain in the rear end to figure out by reading. And we can show you some like tips and tricks. And what we thought we might do is have a fencing event or a fence training workshop on a Saturday or something, or a Sunday. And folks who are like, I don't know how to fence can come out and we can show you also efficiencies that we've learned in moving electric fence for the sheep, which I think would be really helpful. But if there's not interest in it, then we're not going to try to throw that workshop together for you. So it's actually not a bad winter workshop, as long as it's not snowing. So let me know, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com if you're interested, or write in the comments of YouTube if you're interested in the fencing workshop. Just type fencing in the comments. We redid the power to my upper pasture. That's where the goats live. That's all part of the water redesign that's been being put in place here. We also needed to redo some wiring stuff, redo the conduit, and Tactical's been poking away at that. And the cool thing is that means the electric fence, which is one of the primary drivers of electric fencing on the Holler homestead, because we have zones. We're like setting up zones for fencing. It also will result in a plug on the other side of the pasture, which I think is going to be used for keeping water from freezing. So that's like a little thing. Electrical does not have to cost a lot to do, although it costs, at this point more than it did a couple years ago. But having convenient access to water and electricity when you're on a homestead it's like a huge step forward. And so sometimes it's like a little step. It's an incremental step that makes a big difference. And this one is one that will make a big difference here. And then I've mentioned it's been dry. I had to water the food forest. It kept threatening to rain and then not raining. And I'm looking at how dry the area was, even though it's mulched in. And I didn't want to have all of that investment happen and then lose the plants. And so the cool thing is, when we built the food forest, Nick and I discussed how I'm using the land in front of everybody so you could see how decisions are made on if you put a swale in, if you don't put a swale in, where the food forest goes, how access is designed into it, how it fits into the big picture permaculture plan, how it relates to what choices I make in my day-to-day life, like all of those things. And he wasn't originally going to do this, but we decided to put in micro swale. So this is not like a 4-foot pit, right? It's small. It's like maybe 12 inches and 12 inches down and then heaped over on contour, but not quite on contour. So close to on contour, but designed with the idea of moving fencing. And it's easier to move fencing in straight lines. And so we have a little bit of contour on one, it's not in the fencing area. And the other one is how straight can we make it? And it worked great. And the way we dug, we ended up level in the pit of the swale, the micro swale. And that means what I can do is put a hose on one end and it fills up like a pond. And then that water seeps into the little hump upon which the trees and other plants are built. So when I decided to water, what I did was I put a hose at one end, turned it on, came in here and recorded a podcast, came out, and it was just full end to end. It wasn't overflowing or anything. There is overflow built into it, right? So then we moved it to the other one. And in that way, it was very, very easy to water the food forest. And I thought that was kind of cool. So the micro swales have actually added ease of maintenance for me, which is one of my big goals with the food forest, is that I'm willing to put in maintenance time this year and watering and all those things. But ultimately, the way I maintain things is not a little bit every day. It's like this Saturday, I have 6 hours and I'm going to go do a whole bunch of things. And then I'm going to ignore it for a month and a half or 3 months. That is the way I used to go. So Carrie says, absolutely yes on fencing. Okay. Carrie, you have friends who want to come? Because if we get enough people interested, the way I'll do the fencing workshop is get everybody who's interested to let us know. We'll figure out what the schedule looks like, what the price is, and then we're gonna group, like, crowdsource a date, because I feel like I can say a date, but it would be easier if we just try to get as many of the people interested. And that'll be like a pop-up. It will not be a 3-day thing. It's like literally a 1-day thing, maybe an overnight, because once you're here, you might as well camp and have fun, right? Anyway, so that's what's up with the infrastructure. Next segment is finances. And I wanted to talk about the finances of Thanksgiving on the homestead. We didn't raise turkeys this year, so we bought one. It was about $120 for the pasture-raised turkey. Yeah, you heard that right. $120. I heard people complaining up and down about how turkey was 79 cents a pound, and I was laughing my butt off because, oh, well, hello, Jumpy Spider. There's a Jumpy Spider on my monitor looking at me. Hi, little guy. Anyway, I've always been willing to spend the money on the pastured turkey, which are anywhere from $4 to $8 a pound. This one was, I'm thinking about how many pounds it was. It was about $6 a pound. And I don't care, because it's way more flavorful than what you get at the store. And if I'm going to eat something, I want it to be high quality. And I saw all these things about what Thanksgiving dinner is costing people. And they were like, Thanksgiving dinner for 4 is, $65, up from $55 last year. Ooh, he's about to go onto my monitor. Hey, jump at this. Now I'm playing with the spider. I wish I could show you guys. Oh, come on, buddy. It's moving. Get it. Anyway, and I'm just laughing because I'm like, well, it was $120 for the bird. And we had 11 people over. And that's about, by the time I add the rest of the meal together, it was about $150 total to feed 11 people. That's about $14 a head. I actually feel fine with that price. The funny thing is I only had to buy cranberries, butter, and apples for Thanksgiving. And the only other thing I did while at the store, because I went to Aldi, is it was German treat buying day. So I have a few things that are German Christmas treats that I like to bring out at the season from time to time. And I bought some of those. And this year I bought a lot less of those than I did last year, because last year I ended up giving away a whole bunch of treats. Yeah, Adam says 79 cents a pound. It was $1.50 to $3 a here for butterballs. Yeah, so I paid $6 a pound, and I ended up with a lot of leftovers. So that's what the meal cost. And the reason that I didn't have to spend a lot more is that I already had potatoes. I actually bought sweet potatoes too. I should mention that. I already had all the spices I wanted collected from the homestead, or I got some spices from Melissa that I just buy on a regular basis because she does, that's Honeybee's Kitchen, really good spice mixes. I had everything I needed to make gravy. I baked the bread. Like, it was super easy. Chestnuts already here. And when you start adding up all the things you get off your land in this lifestyle, you start realizing if you plan your meal around what you have, you don't have to buy all the things. Like, if I had needed to do a special cornbread stuffing, I would have needed to buy a bunch of things, like cornmeal, for example. I don't stock cornmeal, so I didn't do that. I do keep wheat on hand because I use it from time to time. I actually had a bag of flour that was ground already that I was using to make the dinner rolls and the dressing. And now I have a bunch of leftovers, some of which are going to the pig because I don't eat a lot of bread, but I got to have delicious homemade bread instead of store bread, for example. And overall, that ends up costing me less, but I put in a little bit more effort. But then, of course, there's the shortcuts, right? I have a bread machine, so I can just put everything in and hit dough only if I want to shape it, or if I don't care. Like for the dressing, I don't mind having the loaf with the hole in the bottom from the thing that stirs it, because I don't have one of those ones that like pulls it out so that you have a loaf that doesn't have a hole in the bottom. I'm like, whatever. I'm going to cut it into squares and put it in dressing. So whatever. And I ended up not spending as much on, I used to spend $300 to $500, guys, on getting stuff for Thanksgiving. So for me, that's a cost savings, but I also insist on high quality food, and I don't, we make a lot from scratch. So now the next thing that happens is we have rolling turkey week. Rolling turkey week is using up the rest of the leftover meat. So yes, we spent $14 a person on Thanksgiving because I got a really nice turkey from Peaceful Pastures, and they make great turkeys. And if you're in the Tennessee area and want to get a pasture-raised turkey, I recommend getting them for them or from Kerry if he has turkeys next year. Pasture-raised turkeys are so much better. They make better stew, better flavored meat. So next we make turkey stew. And then tomorrow there will be turkey casserole. And there's some debate about what we're going to do because we have, I don't eat a lot of carbs, and most of the family does not eat lots of carbs, but I have leftover carb parts of this meal. So I'm probably going to do another carb day this week and have a carby casserole. It may be turkey mac and cheese is one of my favorite leftovers that we do. And then from there, if I still have turkey left, we're going to do a turkey shepherd's pie, right? And then from there, if we still have turkey left, we'll have turkey taco night or taco bowl, like salad bowl, taco salad. All of those things, we will have 3 to 4 meals off of this $150 turkey for the rest of the time. And I will end up with broth in jars in my cabinets for cooking. And that's the financial part of homesteading and starting to cook things from scratch that people underestimate. How you can roll leftovers from one meal to the next, and it saves money, and it's a different meal each day, so it's delicious. A lot of people hate leftovers because they don't want to have the same thing twice. We don't have to. Just repurpose them. It's like you get that old chair at the dump, and you like fix one slat and you paint it a different color, and it's a cool looking piece of furniture. You can do that with leftovers too, although I don't understand this. I don't like leftover stuff because a lot of stuff, when it's been in the fridge overnight, like all the flavors coalesce and they're really good. And then you have like stew and roasts are way better after a day. Spaghetti sauce, way better after a day. Lasagna, way better after a day. So I disagree with y'all, but that's just me. Now, any Holler neighbors listening to this who want to join the Q&A session for after, we're about to wrap up today's show. So I've sent out the link. Feel free to hop on. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the Homestead update. If you want to have questions for Holler Neighbors, just feel free to put the first couple words in all caps. I have one question queued up right now about Muscovies, I believe it is. And we'll just work them in along with anything that's been emailed in. Howdy Tag, welcome to the live stream. We're just hitting our Q&A session. Anyway, if you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee and your coffee gifts at hollerroast.com. Two, consider becoming a member. That's all over at livingfreeintennessee.com. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week. Welcome to show number 2, the Q&A show of the week. This is our variety show. We've got Steve and Tracy here coming to us from their already decorated, wonderful looking house. You're already decorated. What's up with that, Steve?
Tracy's a machine. She does not wait.
She does not wait. I need to borrow her hot glue gun, actually. I don't have what I need, though. So I was like, it's not here yet. I'm still waiting on shipping. Shipping this year has been a pain in the neck. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that 2-day
Absolutely.
Amazon taking like 7 days.
Yeah, 2-day Amazon totally is not a thing. With that in mind, we're actually at Holler Roast. I'm saying by the 17th of the month before Christmas, but it's possible that the USPS will not get people's gifts there in time if it's not sent by the 15th. One thing I have learned is you never ship coffee Monday after Black Friday. It doesn't matter if you've ordered and it's supposed to come out Monday and you get mad at me, I will not ship it Monday after Black Friday, because if you ship it Monday after Black Friday, there's this whole glut of packages that have come over the weekend and they ship it to the Nashville distribution center, which is really in Memphis, and it just sits there for week after week. And sometimes it doesn't spit out the other side. So I just don't do it. It's like way too risky. So that's my first tip. Know that if you order coffee this weekend and you think it should ship Monday, it is not shipping Monday. It's shipping Tuesday or Wednesday. And you'll get it faster than if I ship it Monday. So that is what it is. I'm actually surprised Tactical Redneck hasn't joined us. Somebody needs to give him some hard times. Okay, so I have questions, and I think Tracy might be able to answer one of them. So we'll start with Eric from Michigan emailed me this question. How do you personally make roasts? This year's the first year I bought half a cow to support local Beyond Organic farmer and ensure that I have meat. I know how to use the steaks and ground beef, but I've never made a roast. All recipes I see online are like, put the roast and 46 pounds of potatoes in a pot and cook it forever. I'm guessing you have a better way of doing this. Tracy, you want to talk about how you make roasts?
I actually just made a beef roast right a few days before Thanksgiving, and it was a Mississippi roast, and you put it in the Instant Pot.
Yeah.
With pepperoncinis.
With the juice.
With the juice. Just pour the whole jar in there, and I think I cooked it because Nighthawk was here when I was making it, and we had to calculate by the poundage, and so I think we went for an hour and 30 minutes, and it came out
absolutely divine.
Delicious, like melt in the mouth. It was amazing. But I love putting them in the Instant Pot.
Yeah. How long do you cook it? Like 45 minutes or 2 45-minute sessions?
No, this one it was almost 3 pounds, and I cooked it for an hour and 30.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. It said an hour and 50, but then we calculated the time based off of the
poundage.
Weight. Yeah. So it came out delicious.
Amazing.
Amazing. No potatoes. We're trying to do the carnivore here. Minus yesterday.
Pretty sure I'm having more chestnut dressing today.
But yeah, an hour and 30 is what it took, and it was delicious.
Yeah.
So I think it's all the Instant Pot too.
Yeah, the Instant Pot, pressure cooking it does make a big difference. The thing about roasts is some of the roasts that you have, if you don't cook them low and slow, have a tendency to end up tough.
Yep.
And so it depends a bit on, like, if it's a chuck roast or is it a tri-tip? A tri-tip, you can do that roast. What I like to do with that is wrap it in bacon. and then put it in the oven, like roast it in the oven until it is medium rare. And so that's like a temperature gauge in there till it's about 130 to 135. And then let it rest. And then you cut it crosswise to the grain of the meat. And that particular roast doesn't need to be cooked low and slow. But a chuck roast, on the other hand, I'm most likely to take that and heat up some oil in the skillet, brown it, and then put it in a crock pot or roast it in the oven in a roasting pan that's tightly covered that keeps the moisture in there, or put it in the Instapot and cook it till it's tender. And then it is delicious with carrots and potatoes and all of those things.
Yeah.
If you're trying to stay low carb, you don't have to put them in there. They're like, those don't do anything in particular. Put it on a bed of celery or onions or bacon wrapping anything is pretty delicious. So that's hard to go wrong with that. Adam A. Ray Pierce says, chuck roasts I like to cube up and turn into chili. Chuck roasts are also a really good base meat for a beef stew.
Oh, wow.
So you also don't have to, that's a good point. You don't have to keep them in roast form. You can repurpose them if you want to. But, cooking a roast is something people over dramatize as difficult, and it's not. It's one of the easiest, most satisfying farm foods to cook, especially because low and slow means I got up in the morning, spent 2 minutes on this thing, threw it in a crock pot, walked away for 6 to 8 hours, came back, and I had dinner.
Yeah.
And so it's not like, how much of your time did that Mississippi roast? Because the Mississippi roasts are really good.
Yeah.
How much of your time did that take? Like 10 minutes?
Oh, yeah. Just enough to put the thing in the pot and pour the pepperoncinis on it, calculate what time I wanted to, and then I stepped away. So, but I've had many, many failures in my cooking life of roasts.
Really? Tell us about some of your failures. Maybe we can learn from that.
I normally tend to do pork roasts, like the big roast. I can cook those like flawlessly, but anytime I do any beef roast, it just gets too tough. Like you can't even eat it, so I just toss it out.
Do you know why?
She overcooks.
Yeah.
She's scared about undercooking, so she'll add extra, and then it's really dry.
Okay.
So I always overcook. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not cooking in a crock pot at that point, correct?
Right.
Right.
Or like in the oven, or a crock pot.
Yeah.
Not the Instant Pot. The Instant Pot I've noticed is really good. But if I put it in the oven or I put it in a slow cooker, I'm like, oh, a slow cooker says 8 hours. Oh, let me do 8.5 hours, just in case. Never works.
Do you sear it first before you put it in there? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I've never had that issue. I've had occasionally I'll have a dry roast, and it has to do with, I'm going to now admit something that most people don't want to hear. Ran out of time, took it straight out of the freezer into the Instant Pot or the slow cooker. Yep. I noticed when it has not defrosted properly that I have a tendency to end up with drier meat.
Yeah.
But it's still delicious. It's just not the same.
Right.
So here's Letty telling us the better than Mississippi roast, spicy beef, chuck roast, can of beer, jar of pepperoncinis, slow cook for 8 hours, pull it apart, nice and spicy.
Yes, that sounds delicious. We're doing that next, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I guess I better have a roast this week. Except for I got to eat all the turkey. What are you guys doing with your turkey? Anything there?
We're gonna send the kids home with a bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to go back home today. So we're going to give them a lot of the leftovers.
No turkey soup in your future?
Probably.
Yeah.
I think that sounds really good, actually.
Yeah.
Don't know how to make it, but I'll try.
Yeah. Cook those bones.
A good friend of mine, Nicole Sauce.
Yeah. We'll talk about bone broth, right?
Okay,
hey,
yeah.
Humble Mechanics in the room. Hello, Humble Mechanic. Humble. Okay. Now we've ignored Tactical this whole time, so I'm unmuting him. Tactical, you're looking very well backlit.
I can't help what the sun's doing. It does what it wants to.
So Tactical, what's happening in your world?
Enjoying the break in the weather. and trying to take the opportunity to bang out some projects that were in the works. And now that it's, not freezing cold, I got the conduit run for that shed. That's done. All I have to do now is run the wire, and that will give stable electricity to the primary fence charger on this property, which will be nice. And I won't have to get electrocuted or the risk of getting electrocuted every time that GFCI trips. So just working on stuff like that, trying to keep up with animals. The boys need to move in the next
Who are the
couple of
boys?
days.
Not everybody knows who the boys are.
The sheep.
The male sheep.
Generally referred to as the boys or the girls because they're separated. So
They won't be separated forever, but we keep expecting little baby sheep to show up, and they still haven't. Although the girls look really wide right now.
yeah. The two Katahdins definitely look like if they rubbed up against a sharp stick, they would pop.
For anybody watching the video, the jumping spider just ended up on my eyebrow, and now he's on the ground. And I was a little surprised when that happened, but I have had a jumping spider join the live stream today, which is part of the fun. Okay, questions in all caps, guys. It's a conversation, and we will sign off if you don't have any. I have one right here from Andrea. Or Andrea, I should totally know how to say your name since I've met you in person. Jack talked about having a separate setup for 4 of his breeding muscovies for their protection while they were sitting on eggs. I don't have that set up, and I'm wondering if I should. That's a big it depends, because I don't know what your setup is like. At Jack's place, I'm not sure it was for the muscovies setup or for the protection of the other ducks, because muscovies who are setting on a clutch of eggs are rather protective of it, and they have these talons that I have personally been cut with on my wrist, and I understand that those are some, like, muscovies are like the gangster birds of ducks. They're gangster ducks, and they're out there looking all tough, and they are not gonna back down for a fight. Like that's how they are. So I haven't heard Jack talk about that. I can tell you that for the muscovy ducks that we've had them sit on one batch of eggs. They did it in the coop, and our coop has a way that we can divide one section from the other and change which door the ducks go in. And we ended up keeping the muscovy entrance separate from the other ducks, but we let the muscovies in and out every day. And the khaki Campbells just simply did not go on that side of the coop. That's what we did. What I know happens to Jack is his muscovy ducks just disappear on his property, and then they come back with babies. So in order for that to work, you have to have protection on your whole property. So he has a pretty good exterior fence and dogs that are willing to protect and keep predators out. And so he doesn't have as much predator. He has some predator pressure right now. I think there is some sort of a bobcat that can climb the fence getting stuff, but usually he doesn't have a lot of pest pressure or predator pressure on his ducks. And so that works. What I've done when I find duck nests in the yard, I tried to move one once, and that completely resulted in the duck giving up on taking care of those eggs. So don't do that. What I've done is build a cage around a duck in my yard to keep them protected, and that does work. And then once the ducklings are born, what I did with my khaki Campbells is I took the ducklings in and got them dried off and then shoved them back under the mother. And she was super unhappy with me doing that, but that worked pretty well. And then once all of the hatching had happened, I moved the babies to somewhere more safe, and the mom followed. So because that mothering instinct really, really helped with, manipulating the ducks. Does anybody else want to talk about muscovy ducks and babies and all that stuff?
So this is just a general rule of thumb for me, but anytime somebody says something like that, you have to set up a protection area. My first question is always why? Because, if it's because your ducks are going to get into a fight with the other ducks because, it's going to be muscobies versus khakis, and all you have is muscobies, that's obviously a non-issue for you. However, another reason you might set up a protection area is if you say have 50 girls and they all walk into the coop and see, oh, you're sitting on eggs, let me pop an egg out underneath you. You're going to end up with one girl sitting on a pile of eggs, and you might not want that. So that's my general rule of thumb, is anytime somebody says you have to do something, my question, why? So
yeah. Awesome. Okay. Next one we have comes from David saying, update on your LGDs, please, and thank you. Tactile, will you start?
they're doing good. They have taken to the fence, I think. We're running 3-wire with them right now. The two things that they have a tendency to do is jump over, or the last time the one got out, he had found a spot where the ground kind of came across, went into a little bit of a dip, and then came back up, and the wire went straight across, and so he was going underneath. And I just lowered that section of wire down a notch on each post on each side of that, and he stopped doing it. But other than that, I mean, they're back on an auto feeder, gravity feeder, so they seem to be regulating their food pretty well. They did not go through a phase of, oh my God, there's not going to be food all the time, and now there's food all the time, so we're going to eat all of it. They didn't go through that phase when they got the auto feeder back, so that was nice because dog food is expensive.
Can you explain what an auto feeder does and how it works?
Yeah.
He can explain you by showing you on video, but start with words.
Yeah. Theirs is a giant box that works similar to this one, and you just put the food in the top, and then there's a plate. So hopefully you can see this, but there's a hole in the top. This one's full of leaves because it's not in use. But then there's, the plate comes down to here. Hopefully you can see that because I can't see the screen. And then the food just comes down into this little area right here. So it's fully mechanical. The only problem you could really have, aside from running out of food, is especially with like poultry feed or, any type of ground feed like that, sometimes it'll kind of get caked up, and so it won't actually fall. I noticed that with the rabbits because I was like, that's weird. I haven't had to top their feed off in like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And I realized, that's because they can't get to it to eat it because it's not falling through. So,
yeah, and the dog one, guys who are on the audio podcast, the reason it has a plate that comes down is they push the plate for the food to come out. So it's a hopper feeder, and that helps keep the food from just being there and makes it one more barrier between sheep who like dog food and the dog food. And then you have that in a little dog building on runners, right?
Yeah, I think it was 2x10s and basically cut the ends at a 45. So it's kind of like a sled, and then built basically a 4-sided box on top of that. And on one side, there's a piece of sheet metal that's up against there, but it's up off the ground maybe 14 inches. So the dogs will go straight underneath that. I've had one ram that would actually finagle his way and struggle to crawl underneath that, which is why he's segregated right now. But the other two, they'll walk over there and realize, there's dog food in there and we want that, but I can't get to it, so I'm going to go over here and eat some grass.
Yep. Okay, so the other part of the LGD update is that with the shrinking of the sheep herd, they don't have as much to do right now until babies are born. And they are about to start a daily regimen of being trained that I was going to start when I got back from Jackson. Then I was sick and I was like, I'm not going to start it and stop it. So they're going to go back to some basic training on sit and stay and lay down. I'm going to teach them to get into my car so that we can take them to the vet. And they are going to get leash trained, none of which happened before we got them, and some of which we have worked on. But the only way this happens is I build it into my schedule. So starting this week, we're going to start training those dogs. Tactical and I have not discussed exactly how we're aligning on that, but it needs to happen at this age when they're still young enough to learn, because I don't want to end up with a sick dog. I can't get to the vet because I can't get him in my car. And I had a really good long talk with Joel Riles from Fortress Canine about, here's what I have. How do I get it from here to a dog that both protects sheep and who I can manage and have manners in a situation where I have to take it to the vet. So he gave me some great ideas for that. Next question comes from Adam. Did Tactical send pictures of a torn apart four-wheeler when you were out of town? Tactical, did you? Did you?
No, I don't remember what happened that day. I had every intention of actually doing it, but something else came up that I had to address immediately. And so I did not have time. I think at some point in time that week, I actually got around to doing what I was going to send pictures of, but it was more along the lines of I have to pop the wheel off, take a nut off, replace 3 bolts, and put it all back together again. So it took me like half an hour, and I just did it where it was sitting.
Yeah, and the reason the Eversoles are laughing is because I was like, there shall not be a four-wheeler torn up under Taj Mahaler when I get back, because Taj Mahaler is my peace place. That being said, I did come back to at least 4 projects under there, didn't I?
Yeah. One of which was all the electrical.
Huh?
One of which is all the electrical that I just wrapped up.
Yeah, so finish is the word of the year for the rest of the year. Next question is, have you all had to deal with owls taking your livestock? Had one take 3 chickens last night.
Oh, no.
No.
Thoughts on owls? I mean, I have, but thoughts on that? Anybody had to deal with that? Eversoles, you have poultry, no?
Yeah.
Yes. At my last house, we had a big chicken run. We had 6-foot high chain link with hot wire on top of it, but I put a net over the entire thing because I was concerned about hawks and owls. But here, as you know, we just got ElectroNet, and we haven't lost any in the few months they've been here. So yeah, it is a concern, but I'm hoping with the trees that are above their area that are kind of shading them out enough to where they're not as visible to hawks and such, maybe.
I think you have an anti-bird defense system built in to your yard.
Oh, the dogs, yes. Barking dogs.
Yes, barky dogs.
Yes.
Barky, big, scary looking dogs.
Right.
Yes.
I do hear a lot of owls at the back, though, at night. Yeah. They're really loud, and they seem like they're really close. But by that time, the birds are already in their coop, so.
Yeah. Tactical, your thoughts?
Yeah, my first response is always just dogs. I hear owls all the time, and my dog, as soon as she hears the owl, runs out into the yard and starts barking to say, hey, come here so I can eat you.
Yep. So I have a different perspective on this, and I'm pulling the question back up on the live feed. Had one take out 3 chickens last night. So owls usually hunt at dusk and night, right? They're not hunting at 12:30 on a Wednesday afternoon. Mm-hmm. And so the other reason, so we have hawk pressure when we have predatory bird pressure, but we don't have owls swooping in during the day to get our chickens. And that is because our ducks now, we have 1 chicken. Our ducks go into a coop, which is a secure building with a door, and it gets shut. And so what we don't have is the ability for the owls to get into the coop. So my thought, Adam, is look at your chicken run and figure out how to make your chickens get closed into a building at night and then let back out into the run during the day. And if part of why you just leave them open to the run all night long is that you don't have your schedule is traveling or whatever, look at some of those automated chicken doors. I've never used one, but I have friends who have used them to great success. Yeah. And the thing about a chicken run that's open into the coop is, while it might be owls right now, eventually what will really happen is you will then have your war with the raccoon that figures out how to spread apart some of that fencing and get in there or climb up over the top. So if you really want to avoid predator pressure, a really good thing to do is close those girls or boys or girls and boys into a coop at night. And I know that's what the Eversoles do as well, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So the other benefit of that is the eggs are in the coop in the morning. So anyway, I am not seeing any other questions. So let's go once around the horn, let everybody say what they want to say, and then we will sign off for this Black Friday. Eversoles get to go first. What do you two want to talk about?
Had a wonderful time yesterday.
Yes.
Great food, great friends, great drinks, and great games. Game night was fun.
Yeah, we're gonna do more game nights. That was fun.
And glad we got to our kids were here to be able to meet you guys and participate. So that was cool.
Yeah, cool. Tactical, your last words before we sign off.
Stay tactical, America.
Okay, that's great. Captain America said, "Say tactical, America." Perfect, guys. Going into the holiday season, remember that it is what you make of it. And if you're feeling pressure, like I'm always like, hey, buy coffee as gifts. Don't buy coffee as gifts if it is putting you in debt. Okay? You do not need to give any Christmas gifts at all other than maybe a happy handshake to your real friends if it's out of your budget. And if it's out of your budget, don't do it. Don't do it, man. Other than that, just remember it's hard to stand up for that sometimes. But the people who really love you don't care about if you give them a washcloth for Christmas or coffee for Christmas or any of those things. I know a lot of what we like to do is have a little stocking stuffer exchange here, but we don't make a big deal out of it for the reason that, you're building the life you want, and it really helps to have money to do that. So anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there, and we will sign off for now. See you guys on Monday. Of course, there will be podcasts through the weekend because we have a really cool interview show that I recorded from one of our listeners coming out Sunday. Make it a great week.
See ya.